Hey guys, welcome to my channel. I'm Serena and I am your go-to guide for all things sensitive. Thank you for joining me on another video. Today we are going to be talking about HSPs, empaths, and the victim mentality. Why so many HSPs and empaths struggle with the victim mentality. So without further ado, let's get into the video. If you're new here, welcome. Make sure to hit the subscribe button and hit the little notification so you do not miss any of the new videos that are coming out. If you've been here before, welcome back and thank you for joining me. Today we're going to be talking about, as we said before, the victim mentality. So the victim mentality is super common among highly sensitive people and empaths. Why? Because there's a few reasons, okay? So one reason that the victim mentality is so common among highly sensitive and empathic people is because they were misunderstood as children. So what I mean by this is, as children that are very sensitive or empathic are going to feel things in their environment and from other people within their environment that those around them do not feel. So whether that's friends, parents, grandparents, any type of adult figure is going to be especially impactful, because as children, those are the people that we're looking up to see, like, okay, is what's going on here, like what I'm feeling, what you're feeling. And because we don't get that emotional mirroring back from our adult role models in our lives, that could be teachers or anything of that nature, we end up feeling very misunderstood. And with that comes a deep sense of something's happening to me, and something's wrong with me. So I'm a victim of life. A lot of times is where that will come from. There's also an element of feeling like they're the victim because of the fact that they can feel what's going on with somebody else or what's going on in the environment. So I'm going to use two different examples for this. So what's going on with somebody else, right? So for me, I can talk about my childhood. So I grew up the only empath and the only HSP in my family. So when certain things were happening within the family dynamic, a lot of times I would feel very gaslit because I would be feeling, what's going on in the very subtle emotional levels of the people in my family. And what would happen is those people might not even have been aware of what was going on within them as well. So I can use a specific example of my parents. Bless them, they're beautiful, loving people. But oftentimes their desire to protect us as children would come off as a lot of tension between them, but no actual communication, right? So what would happen is I would be over here sensing all of the things that's not being said between them. They look on the outside like they're okay, but on the underside, there's all this tension and anger and frustration and sadness and, a desire to connect, but they're not able to, and, walls being put up and frustrations from that. And I would feel all of this turmoil and, display it or take it on myself because of my empathic nature. And so because of this, I oftentimes felt like whatever somebody else was feeling, I'm a victim of that. So I actually grew up with a giant fear of people, just in general. Like, I was always afraid of people. I could not make a phone call to schedule my own appointments, nothing like that. Until I was like 17, my mom had to cut me off and say, listen, I'm not making your phone calls anymore for you. You need to figure this thing out. So I was deeply afraid of people, because I was also deeply afraid of their emotions, because I felt like anytime I was interacting with a person, I had to feel what they were feeling. I was never taught the tools to cope with being an empath growing up. So whatever somebody else was feeling, it was like, well, I guess that's mine too. And so that put me into a giant victim mentality. And it wasn't until I started reading books on being an empath and talking to therapists and talking to friends and listening to podcasts and realizing like, oh my God, there are other people out there that are feeling the things I'm feeling, and they're creating tools, you know, to shield themselves and to create boundaries and to observe without absorbing. You know, it's these huge concepts that I never understood, which caused me to feel like I was the victim and that these emotions were happening to me because they were not mine, but I was still feeling them. So another way that we also can relate to this victim mentality, especially as highly sensitives as well. And in this, I'm going to go a little bit more with like the external circumstances, the external stimulus. And very much in the same way that empaths might feel like emotions are happening to them. So as a child, right, if I was sitting in class and I had an itchy tag on the back of my shirt and my, you know, it was starting to get itchy. And then also there was a light flickering overhead. And then also the heater kicked on in the classroom, but the teacher was also talking. And there's all of these things going on at once that are very, like, to me, were very, I say to me because it's not like that for everybody else that's not highly sensitive, you know. Those are things that kind of fade to the background, whereas an HSP is going to be very finely attuned to all of this stimulus that's coming in. And what happens then is you get very overwhelmed and you feel like the world is just like constantly invading your space. So I've actually been struggling with this a lot recently. If you watched my last video, it was very raw, very real. I'll put it up here. My last video was something else. But so if you watch my last video, you'll know that I'm now at my mom's house. It's very small. She lives in a tiny house trailer, and she has a dog. And she has a cat as well, but the dog, you know, is younger, and he's very much like, there's not really a lot of space for him to move in, and there's not really a lot of space for me to move in, or her, or the cat. It's very close quarters, okay? So I've been dealing with this recently because, you know, I'll be sitting and meditating, and then a dog comes over and puts his wet nose on my hands as I'm like sitting there, you know, or in prayer position, he'll sniff on my hands, and it's very jarring because of my high sensitivity. You know, it's wet, it doesn't feel great. It's jarring because I wasn't expecting it, you know, all of those kinds of things. And so in that way, I've been having to look at this childhood wound of feeling like I'm the victim and like life is constantly happening to me. And that I'm separated from life, you know, that I'm not a part of that because there's things that are happening to me. So being in the victim mentality is super dangerous, and for a lot of highly sensitive people and empaths, it's a foundational belief of how they interpret the world. So the crazy part to me, guys, this is super crazy. So the crazy part to me is that highly sensitive people and empaths have these beautiful gifts, just absolutely phenomenal, stunning, can heal the world, but are held back because they feel like they're victims of life. And I know because I feel like this sometimes, and I worked so much with different mentors and mediators and therapists and healers and books and podcasts and every type of media I could get my hands on, because I wanted to understand that, okay, I came into this body and chose to be highly sensitive. Now that's dependent on your belief system. I believe that as souls, we came into these bodies, we chose what struggles we were going to have beforehand, we knew everything coming into it. That's my personal belief system. You don't have to believe that. That's totally cool. But truthfully, we have these gifts, and they don't always feel like gifts because of how we grew up as children. Okay, so growing up as children, if we truly believed that these things are happening to us, and the reason for that is because they felt like they were outside of our control, right? So most of us that are highly sensitive grew up in families that did not have highly sensitive people in them. So therefore, we had to learn the tools on our own of how to cope with these things. And having that lack of control of what's going on in your external world, and also people not mirroring back to you, yes, that what you're feeling is valid or right, or you're not too sensitive, you're not crazy, you're not too much or too emotional, things like that. And those are the things that truly make us feel that we're in a victim mentality. So what I would pose you to do is look at where that shows up in your life. If you're highly sensitive and empathic, like, where do we stop taking responsibility for ourselves? And this can be really felt in the solar plexus, is where I notice it the most, because that's where our personal power is. So your personal power relates to how you show up in the world, where your confidence is. And a lot of empaths and highly sensitive people have problems with their self-confidence or their self-esteem, because of the fact that we felt like we were being gaslit as children, because nobody else related in the world that we related in the world. You know, there wasn't that, yes, you're feeling things right, or yes, that is what reality is like. It was always, no, that's not right, that's not what we're feeling, or there's something wrong with you, or you're broken. So many of us have grown up with these wounds that we don't belong, or that things are happening to us and we have no control over it, when really we have to create such strong boundaries, right? We have to create boundaries and know what circumstances really serve us and what circumstances do not serve us. It is not selfish to say that somebody's energy is not incongruent with your own energy and to leave. You know, it is not selfish to say that your body is feeling discomfort right now because you are too cold, and so you need to leave your circumstance and get warmer. You know, so I was on, a lot of people don't know this, but I was actually on an African safari kind of trip. It was like a crazy 4-month-long car camping trip. So I was in a lot of really uncomfortable conditions, okay? And in these uncomfortable conditions, I was traveling with people that were not highly sensitive. They were male, it was 2 males, and neither one of them were highly sensitive. So I would go through moments of being deeply bodily uncomfortable and have people be like, well, you know, you kind of just have to get used to it. You just have to deal with it. There's nothing else you can do. You're a quitter if you don't want to camp here. You know, if you don't like the energy here and you want to leave, like, you're just giving up. You know, a lot of people will not understand your sensitivities, and it is the utmost importance that it is your job to create scenarios where you are feeling empowered in your own conditions. Okay, so this is really huge. So for yourself, just look at where you are showing up in the world and still feeling like the victim. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. Please hit the like and subscribe button. Comment down below if you've struggled with the victim mentality and how that has shown up in your life. And if you have any questions, as always, please feel free to reach out to me and comment down below, and I'll be happy to answer any questions as well. I hope you guys have an amazing rest of your day wherever you are. Big love, Serena.